Hello, hello. Welcome to my channel. My name is Kay Gruner, and today I'm going to talk about how I became a lawyer and was it worth it? I just want to kind of get right down to it. What was the path I took? Did I know what I wanted to be when I was growing up? No, I had absolutely no idea. I just knew that I was a high achiever. I have lots of theories around this, but I am the fourth of four kids, and I guess I was very motivated from bringing home good grades and things. So maybe that was it. Yeah, I just love to learn, and I had a million different interests. So I just worked hard, studied all the subjects, and did well, and had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. When I went to college, of course, I had to pick a major, so I chose two completely unrelated majors: biology and Spanish. I went to a small liberal arts school in Ohio, kind of in a like farmy area. Almost everybody lived on campus. Almost everybody graduated in 4 years. It's called Hiram College. I absolutely love it. It's so special to me for a million reasons, not just because it was a place where I grew up and became an adult, but it was a place where I felt very taken care of, and I also felt very special and unique. And I don't know if the experience could have been the same at a big school. For me, anyway, it was really wonderful to have such a small, really actually close knit community. We took a lot of courses that were interdisciplinary, meaning they would take different topics that might even feel unrelated and like mash them together. So one semester for me, this was really the best example I have. I went on this study abroad trip over 12 weeks and studied the different biome environments around the world and saw them in person. So the two leaders of that were in different departments. Denny Taylor from the biology department, he was also my advisor, and biology was my major. David Anderson from the English department. So we had an English professor and a biology professor that led this group of us around the world. Another thing about Hiram College, I ran cross country there, which is awesome, but I'm not that fast of a runner. It's just, it was a really small school, and the athletic program wasn't huge, and the cross country team like needed people. I think I was just running one day at Hiram, and some folks came up to me and were like, "Are you a runner? Do you want to do cross country?" And I was like, I'm not very good. But then I ended up joining my first year, and I'm so grateful because it was so like formative for me to run in college. So I ended up being captain my junior and senior year. For me, my experience in college is that at the end of it, I got into Phi Beta Kappa, and their motto is "Love of learning is the guide to life." And I really love that, and I wanted to mention it because that ultimately really feeds into this story of how I became a lawyer. The love of learning brought me to this profession. When I was growing up, I had like no dream jobs. I think at one point I wanted to be like a weather girl, but I just kind of liked every subject, like every topic. I could still go back and have studied like gotten any degree and been happy. But what did I study in college? I studied biology and Spanish. Basically, I studied whatever I wanted. Spanish because I had traveled abroad the summer between high school and college. This was to Honduras, and it was like completely life altering experience. I of course wanted to study Spanish, but at the time, and I guess still now, I didn't think that was very practical. So I did a double major. So I did major in Spanish, major in biology. Biology, I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I really liked this guy, Jeff Corwin, at the time, who had a show on Animal Planet where he was like in Latin America just looking at all the like animals in the forest, and I really loved that. I want to make a note about that too, because we were talking about how I became a lawyer. You don't have to study any specific subject in college. This is in the US. You just have to get an undergraduate degree. So you don't have to study like criminal, whatever. I don't even know what those majors are. I forget what they all are. Just study whatever you want in college if you want to become a lawyer. You need to be a good writer, a good reader. You need to be good at analytical skills and problem solving and things like that. So maybe think about that if you are watching this to learn how to become a lawyer. Another key piece of how I became a lawyer that really developed in undergrad was internships and jobs and things like that. I always felt like I needed to be doing something sort of productive and practical. I had regular jobs on campus, and then I was a server as well. My first summer internship was with the biology department. I was like making this program for the Ohio EPA. What it taught me is that I didn't want to be a field biologist, which is what Jeff Corwin was or is. I hope he's still alive. Hold on, I'm going to check. Okay, great. He's still alive. He's still just as cute as ever, 56 years old. So I had a biology internship, and it made me realize that I didn't want to wear waders like rubber pants and go walking around in the streams and collect specimens. And I kind of knew at that point I wasn't going to go get a master's in biology, but love of learning is the guide to my life. So I started exploring what other options there were. Internships. So I had the biology internship. Great. I had some other ones. I honestly forget now what they are, and they're not on my resume anymore. I'm 35. I will say that when it comes to like getting into law school, that obviously relates to like having good grades, writing a good letter, getting references and things like that, but also having this well-rounded background between academia and hobbies and interests and clubs. And I did all the clubs, I did everything. And then taking the LSAT, which I did, I studied for. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into getting into law school and becoming a lawyer, but also if you're just building a career kind of in general, I would have been doing this stuff anyway. I wasn't doing it on purpose to get into law school or become a lawyer. Law school itself, the summer between graduating from college and going to law school, of course, I got an internship. I was just hired as a law clerk for this law firm in my area, and I was not doing legal work at all. I was just taking paperwork to the different courts around Northeast Ohio, because at the time, this was 2010, I guess there wasn't e-filing, or at least the attorneys who hired me, they weren't using e-filing if it did exist. So I would literally take like documents that were to be filed with the courts, and I would take them up to the window, like wait in line, get it stamped, and file it. So I didn't do any legal work, but again, I filled my time with, and I think this contributes to me ultimately getting a job as a lawyer once I graduated law school, but I was always doing something that felt like it kind of fit within my bigger picture vision and life strategy, professional goals, things like that. I went to law school at the University of Akron in Akron, Ohio. My first semester was completely culture shock. I will tell you one thing. I don't know if most people know this, but when you go to law school, your exams, you get one exam per class per semester, usually. That means that you get one chance to completely prove yourself and get your final grade for the semester for every single class. That was crazy. So there's obviously a lot riding on that. Also, another bit of culture shock is that they do this thing called the Socratic method, where you get called on just like surprise, Miss Epley, that was my maiden name. They ask you to like brief the case, which means explain the facts, what was the issue, what was the legal rule, everything. Between those two things, it was a complete culture shock. The amount of work itself, I was not super surprised by. It was so much work, but I think at that point I had already been pretty good at like student work. I had, in studying two majors, I had lots of work to do. Biology itself as a science was like a tough. The work itself wasn't a shock, but it really was like so much work, and you lose a lot of the like social time and family time, and that was really hard in law school. Again, if anyone's watching this to sort of figure out how they might get to be a lawyer one day, how they might become a lawyer, just know that it is not without extreme levels of hard work, and then also sort of a deprivation of the standard socializing and family time that you used to get for 3 to 4 years. There was a point once, which I think I was also going through a breakup, but my mom had sat me down and said that I had hardened, I think was her word. And that was really hard to hear, but also she was right. It was true. But I think that it was good to have her tell me that. That way I could just sort of think about it. I mean, here I am like over 10 years later and I still remember it, so thanks, Mom. I think it's important if you're going to go through something really hard like law school or master's or doctoral degrees is to try to stay grounded, do the work, but like don't get completely lost in it. Obviously, you do just need to pass, and you need to pass the bar after you graduate law school. At that point, you're a lawyer, right? Like you are legally considered your licensed attorney if you do all that. But are you going to get a job if you don't have good grades? I don't know. I had pretty good grades. I was not top of my class. I think I was top 30% and got cum laude. And then I had internships. Again, I like tried to get these jobs and things. My first internship, though, I did not get my first summer after law school. A lot of people do, and I was devastated, like everybody else who didn't get a job their first summer of law school, because you only have 2 summers in law school. Didn't get a job, but I did end up getting one in February of my second year. It was at a patent firm in Cleveland, Ohio, in this department that handled pharmaceutical work. And I had that biology experience, baby. Did not plan this, but it was perfect because I was able to work in the patent setting with pharmaceuticals, and I had that like basic knowledge to be able to understand what I was reading. I want to talk a little bit about what else happened while I was in law school. Because I had the science background, and I did not plan this, but it just worked out. I had a biology background, which made me eligible to take the patent bar. The patent bar is the exam from the USPTO, that's the US Patent and Trademark Office, that allows attorneys who have certain backgrounds, which includes sciences, hard sciences, and biology was included. It allows them to become licensed patent attorneys. It's a specific type of attorney. And if you go Google like patent attorney salaries, it's a good one to be. If you want like job security and good money, patent attorney is a great job. All of my peers at the time were studying for the patent bar exam. Yeah, so I was too. I ended up failing the first time, completely devastated. It has a really low bar passage rate. Let me see. Hold on. I have to look this up so I feel better about myself. 46% in 2023, but I failed the first time and I cried a lot. But then you know what? I tried again and I did pass it the second time, but my gosh, was it hard. Those were both really important things for me. Did I know going into law school that I wanted to be a patent attorney? Absolutely not. I had no clue. In fact, I joined a bunch of organizations and things, student orgs, to see what it is that I might want to do. I joined the moot court team. Highly recommend if any of y'all are going to law school, moot court, trial team, do something. You have to try out for those, but I highly recommend that you do it. Practice and get on one of those teams, or law review, of course. I actually explored other topics. I explored immigration law, environmental law, IP law. It made the most sense, and it was also very interesting because IP is all about protecting your ideas, and I just thought it was super exciting. That was the direction I went in. Also, take leadership roles everywhere. I realized something is that a lot of resume building is super easy. It's time consuming to take on a leadership role, but not a lot of people want the role. I mentioned earlier I was captain of my cross country team, which I also did orientation leader, and also in law school I was on the leadership committees. There was like VP of the student orgs for 2 different ones, the Moot Court Society, and then I was president of the IP Student Association. Take leadership roles. There are so few people competing for these roles, and it's so helpful for your resume. All right, so my first job as a lawyer, that firm that hired me as a law clerk, which, by the way, can I go back for a moment? I was serving in a sushi restaurant in Fairlawn, Ohio, and I had my little non-slip squeaky shoes on. I had my apron. I got the email offer for the job. So this was my first law clerk job, which was massive. It was a huge relief and it was super exciting because it made me feel like, okay, I have kind of a path to like getting a job. Also, law school is expensive. I had a lot of debt. So I remember being in the back, like in the kitchen area, and I got this email and I called my parents and I cried. I was just so happy. And like that's another moment in my life that I'll never forget because I can just like feel and see what was around me. Being in the kitchen with my server apron and getting this job, which was like this entrance into my future, it felt really, really big at the time. And it still really does. Okay, so my first job, got an offer to be a pharmaceutical patent attorney at a law firm in Cleveland. You start your job before you find out whether you've passed the bar. So I started in like August, and then I found out October whether I passed the bar, and I did. I passed it on the first try, and then I became a licensed attorney. I know this video is about how I became an attorney, so I'm not going to spend too much time walking through each and every legal job that I've had, but I want to give you a little bit of a summary of like what working as an attorney has been for me over the past 10 years, because this was 10 years ago. So my first job was at a patent law firm doing pharmaceutical work. I wasn't drafting patent applications. I was actually writing legal arguments about patents that were already issued, trying to make sure that my client at the time was able to develop certain drugs without infringing on others' patents. One thing I didn't share yet is that during law school, the very end of law school, I met my now husband. He was from Georgia. After law school, I was in Ohio. I had my job offer. I was starting my job in the fall, but I was dating this boy who had just moved back to Georgia. After 2 years of dating, I moved down to Georgia. When I left my job, We didn't even have a conversation about me working remotely from Georgia. I was kind of excited to leave that job. It was fun, but I think I had realized that patent law was a little bit dry. It was not my passion. I got into it because it made the most sense based on my background, my resume. Doing that type of work it didn't feel like it was where I needed to be to love my job. I moved to Georgia. Little did I know, I wasn't that tight, okay? Because I came to Georgia, could not find a job. I was unemployed for a little bit over a year. It sucked. I had left a great job. I didn't really regret leaving that job. I just felt very unfulfilled and disappointed and scared that I had made a huge mistake. I did work during that time for Lululemon, which was really great. I loved that job. I met my first friends down here that were my friends, not like my husband's friends, right? Like my own, very own friends. And I had a purpose. I had somewhere to go, somewhere to be, things to do. That job at Lululemon paid me like $10.25 an hour. That also kind of hurt my ego a little bit, but I don't have a huge ego, so it didn't end up really mattering. When I moved to Georgia, I had to take another bar exam. My first legal type job in Georgia, I did get back on the horse finally, or back on track, was at Emory University in the Office of Technology Transfer. What this office does is they take all of the inventions, intellectual property that come out of a university, bridge the gap between R&D and commercialization, file for patent protection, and then they would license it out to a pharma company. Great job. And I learned how to do contracts. But my breakthrough job, the job that made me feel so insanely proud, and also I was becoming like a mid-level attorney at this time, was I went in-house at a pharmaceutical company. Basically did like commercial contracts and more at stake. Now we're in corporate. Now we're like, outside the university setting. It was intense. It was awesome. I learned so much. Really, really enjoyed my time there and learned so much and grew as an attorney. After I worked there, I went into big law. For those who don't know what big law is, this I feel like is something I should also Google. Big law refers to the largest and most prestigious law firms that operate across multiple offices. I went and worked for a big law firm after I was in-house at the pharma company, and I worked in their healthcare practice. Coincidentally, I got pregnant with my second baby. So taking a job that was the most demanding so far in my career. But when I became pregnant with my second kid, I thought, oh my God, can I do this once this baby is born? And do I want to do this? Ultimately, I decided to leave. I went into academia, and for the past 2 years, I have been teaching. I'm a professor, and currently I work at Georgia State University and teach legal classes to the business students. Okay, so yeah, I was in big law for a minute, and then I just completely jumped ship, and now I'm teaching. Will I return to full-time law practice one day? I don't know. I really loved it. I really, really loved it. But yeah, I still have my licenses, Ohio and Georgia. I want to keep this tight, keep this on the topic of how I became a lawyer. Here are some little tips that I have. Number one, have a big picture strategy and just don't be super granular. All of my success over the past 10 plus years as an attorney has come from this concept of loving learning, making good decisions that make sense with my big picture goals. My big picture goals were never to make a lot of money. My big picture goals were kind of more along the lines of get a job in an industry that's stable, where there is, subject matter that you like and that you're interested in. For example, when I took my very first job as a pharma patent attorney, was I really in love with pharma or patents? No, I just didn't know yet. And it made sense because I loved biology. So each step along the way, just make sure that it kind of aligns with this like big picture strategy. Also be alert and opportunistic and do all the networking you can with that in mind. So I was always even when I was a practicing attorney, I was always joining the local bar association. I was going to meetings. I went to the IP organizations. That was my subject matter. So of course, that's what I went to. It helped me be ready so that when an opportunity came, I could like launch into it in order to better my career or better my life. Also, be willing to be flexible. And that's something that I completely had to do, but I was happy to do it. So it wasn't really a challenge for me. But I do see this as a challenge for others who feel like they have to be on a certain very specific path and they can't jump off of it. I jumped tracks. Literally every time I got a new job, I kind of jumped tracks, but it was always within that bigger picture vision. For me, it made sense. But for others, I think it was confusing that I made so many job changes. There's always overlap. Always, always. Maybe it didn't seem so on the surface level, but I made sure of it, because I also wanted to do a good job. Focus on learning and betterment in general. like all the time if you can. Stay in tune with your well-being. I always keep that reminder of, not letting myself get too hardened and not letting myself be so immersed in work that I can't be present with my kids, for example. But also, I am definitely of the camp of work hard and work yourself to the level that you can tolerate. That means sometimes pulling all-nighters. For me, it meant pulling all-nighters. It meant breaking down and crying sometimes, but always doing it, doing the dang thing. And that is something that, I can't give that advice to everyone universally, but I often chose working hard over feeling good. And it was very rewarding and it worked. It worked in the end for me. I think there's a limit. Like, if, of course, it's about balance. I wouldn't recommend doing that constantly, which is why I didn't go into big law as a first year attorney, right? I couldn't have hacked it. I do want to just mention, was it worth it? Because I haven't made it clear already. I knew that this answer would be reflected in everything that I've had to say so far, but to be just direct about it, absolutely, 100%. I am so happy with my career, with my life, with my job opportunities, with my future prospects. Everything that I've done so far has been so incredibly rewarding and fulfilling. And in addition, has paid pretty well, except for Lululemon when I was a manager. But you know what? That was not a legal job. I was underpaid at some points in my legal career. I think that's not a reason not to take a job, especially if you need it, if you need a job. And if it's super relevant for your industry, you need to take that job and work on maybe getting something a year or two down the road that pays more. It was 100% worth it. And financially, I feel secure. I still owe a lot of debt. Law school is very expensive. So was it worth it? That question, I think, is something that only you can answer personally. I found it to be worth it, but I feel like it wouldn't have been worth it if I had tried to stick the path that I chose on day one of being a lawyer, patent attorney. I don't think that I would be super happy. And every time that I felt like my job was needing something different or something more, I'm so grateful that I decided to make those changes every time. I never really hesitated. Or if I did, it was, internal, but I never regretted. Let me say that. Once I made the decisions, they were very informed and well thought out. And although they might have seemed random on the outside, I've been, for example, in-house, I've been in big law, I've been in boutique patent law, I've been industry as well as nonprofits. I just think it's really important to make sure that you're not trapped into thinking that you absolutely must go a very specific path, and that once you choose, that you can't go onto another track. Like, I've done it so many times now. And there was only one time ever that somebody looked at my resume and said, why do you have a gap here? Or like, why are you leaving this job? I answered the questions pretty honestly, and I got the jobs. My current job teaching is so incredibly rewarding. Being able to give this legal education to business students who are just in the very early stages of becoming professionals and going off into a million different directions, getting to touch so many lives all at once is also really cool. But yeah, so that's how I became a lawyer. And was it worth it? I'm happy to share more about this topic, or maybe dive into details on some of these other topics, like what's it like being a lawyer, or what did my day-to-day look like in these different jobs? What kind of work did I actually do? How to get into law school, how to study for the bar, how to, land your first legal job, or how to design a career that you love. I could go into more on those topics, but I just wanted to introduce myself as a person, as a professional, and let you know a little bit about my journey and how I got here. So thank you for listening if you've gotten this far. Cheers and have a great day.